There's a specific kind of exhaustion that doesn't show up in your body. It lives somewhere deeper, in the space between your thoughts and your heartbeat. The kind that makes you feel tired even after sleeping 10 hours straight. Because what you're carrying isn't physical weight. It's emotional memory. It's the exhaustion of being strong for too long, of reading rooms before entering them, of managing other people's emotions while quietly suffocating your own, of smiling through things that should have made you scream, just because falling apart felt like it would take more energy than holding it together. And if you know exactly what I'm talking about, if you felt that description in your chest instead of just hearing it in your ears, then you've probably been through more than most people realize, more than you've ever put into words, more than you let yourself acknowledge. Maybe it started when you were the kid who learned to read the room before you learned to read books. The one who could tell when a conversation was about to turn sharp just by the way someone shifted their weight. Or maybe you were the teenager who became everyone's therapist without ever applying for the job. The friend who held space for everyone else's breakdowns while quietly compartmentalizing your own. You know this feeling if you've ever smiled through something that should have made you cry. Just because crying felt like it would take more energy than you had. You know it if you've ever felt guilty for resting, like stillness was somehow a betrayal of all the problems that still needed solving. You know it if your first instinct when someone asks, "How are you?" is to calculate what they can handle hearing, not what you actually feel. There's this thing that happens when life asks too much of you too soon. Your nervous system doesn't just adapt, it rewires itself into something both incredibly resilient and deeply tired at the same time. You become fluent in emotional languages you never wanted to learn. Disappointment, hypervigilance, premature responsibility. And somewhere along the way, you started wearing maturity like armor, not because you wanted to grow up fast, but because life didn't give you the option to stay young. Psychologists have a term for this: complex trauma response. Not the kind that comes from one catastrophic event, but the kind that accumulates over time, like water slowly eroding stone. The concept was developed by trauma researcher Judith Herman in her groundbreaking work on prolonged, repeated trauma. She found that when someone experiences ongoing stress without adequate support, their psychological development doesn't just pause, it reorganizes around survival. Your brain essentially builds new infrastructure designed to keep you functional when everything feels unstable. And here's what matters. This isn't a character flaw. This isn't you being too sensitive or overthinking everything. This is your mind doing exactly what it was designed to do: adapt to protect you. The exhaustion you feel isn't weakness. It's the cumulative weight of being strong for longer than anyone should have to be. If any of this is landing hard right now, like you're sitting there thinking, "Damn, how does this describe me so accurately?" You've found your people. This is Unfelt, where we dig into the psychology behind the things you've always felt but never had words for. The emotional experiences that don't fit into tidy Instagram therapy posts. We're going deeper. Let's keep going. Let's talk about how this actually develops. Because people who've gone through too much don't wake up one day and decide to become hyper-aware, emotionally parentified, or chronically anticipatory. It starts early, usually between ages 6 and 14, during what psychologists call the critical attachment period. This is when your brain is supposed to be learning that the world is safe, that adults are reliable, that your emotions are manageable. But for some kids, that's not the lesson they receive. Instead, they learn that love is conditional, that peace is temporary, that showing your real feelings might make things worse. Maybe you grew up in a home where one parent's mood determined everyone's day, where you learned to test the emotional temperature of a room before walking into it. Or maybe you had a parent who was physically there but emotionally unreachable, checked out, overwhelmed, dealing with their own unprocessed pain. So you learned early that your needs were negotiable, that asking for comfort felt selfish, that taking care of yourself meant not burdening anyone else. Developmental psychologist Winnicott introduced the concept of the false self, a protective personality that children develop when their authentic emotional needs can't be safely expressed. In his book, The Maturational Processes and the Facilitating Environment, Winnicott writes, "The false self has one positive and very important function: to hide the true self, which it does by compliance with environmental demands." In other words, you learn to become what was needed, not what you were. You learn to read people's expectations and mold yourself accordingly. You became the responsible one, the calm one, the one who doesn't make waves, not because that's who you naturally were, but because that's who you needed to become to survive emotionally. And when this happens during childhood, it doesn't just affect your personality, it affects your neurobiology. Your amygdala, the brain's threat detection system, becomes hyperactive. Your prefrontal cortex, which regulates emotions and makes decisions, has to develop faster than it's supposed to. You essentially skip emotional childhood and land straight into premature emotional adulthood, which is why, even now, you might feel decades older than your actual age. So, what does all of this look like when you're an adult? How does a childhood spent adapting to instability show up in your daily life now? Here are 7 patterns that people who've been through too much tend to recognize immediately. 1. Hypervigilance, disguised as intuition. You don't just have good intuition. You've trained yourself to scan for danger in places where most people see safety. Someone changes their texting pattern, you're already analyzing what it means. A friend seems slightly off during a conversation, you're mentally running through everything you might have said wrong. It's not paranoia, it's pattern recognition, built from years of needing to predict emotional weather to protect yourself. You know this if you've ever been called observant, when really, you just can't turn off the part of your brain that monitors everyone's emotional state. 2. Apologizing for existing. You say sorry before asking questions, before stating opinions, before taking up space in any form. Sorry, can I ask you something? Sorry, I know you're busy, but sorry for bothering you. This develops when you internalize the belief that your needs are inherently burdensome. It costs you self-advocacy. It costs you boundaries. It costs you the ability to ask for what you deserve without feeling guilty. You know this if your automatic response to conflict is assuming you did something wrong, even when you didn't. 3. Emotional hoarding. You collect other people's problems like emotional souvenirs. A friend vents to you, and 3 days later, you're still carrying the weight of their struggle while they've already moved on. You absorb stress that isn't yours because your nervous system learned that caring means carrying. It developed because somewhere along the way, you became the person everyone leaned on, and you never learned how to put that weight down. You know this if you finish conversations feeling emotionally drained, even when you barely talked about yourself. 4. The illusion of low maintenance. People think you're easygoing, flexible, low drama, the friend who never complains. But the truth is, you're not low maintenance. You're highly self-maintained. You've learned to meet your own needs so quietly that others don't even realize you have any. This pattern exists because expressing needs felt risky, so you learned to minimize them until they became invisible. You know this if people are genuinely shocked when you finally admit you're struggling because they had no idea. 5. Anticipatory grief. You mourn things before they end. A relationship is going well, but you're already imagining how it might fall apart. You get good news, but your first thought is, when will this stop working out? Your brain does this because it learned that preparing for loss hurts less than being blindsided by it. You know this if happiness makes you anxious instead of peaceful, like you're waiting for the other shoe to drop. 6. Overfunctioning in relationships. You're always the one checking in, the one planning, the one remembering, the one trying harder. Not because you're controlling, but because you've internalized the belief that if you don't hold things together, they'll fall apart. This comes from being the stabilizer in unstable environments growing up. It costs you reciprocity. It costs you rest. It makes you feel like you're in relationships alone, even when you're not. You know this if you've ever felt exhausted by how much effort you put into connections that others seem to maintain effortlessly. 7. Selective vulnerability. You'll listen to someone's deepest fears for hours, but when they ask about yours, You share feelings, sure, but only the ones that won't make you look too broken, too needy, too much. You protect your real pain like it's classified information. This exists because vulnerability in your past often came with consequences: dismissal, judgment, or being told you were overreacting. You know this if you're everyone's safe space, but you don't really have one yourself. Real talk. Which one of those 7 patterns hit the hardest for you? Drop a number in the comments, 1 through 7, or tell me if there's one I didn't mention that you'd add. And if you're watching Unfelt for the first time, hit subscribe. This is what we do every week. Deep psychological breakdowns of the stuff you feel, but don't always have language for. All right? Let's go deeper. Now, let's talk about what's actually happening in your brain when you've been through too much. Because this isn't just psychological, it's biological. The amygdala, your overactive alarm system. When you experience chronic stress, especially during development, your amygdala, the brain's fear center, becomes hypersensitive. It starts interpreting neutral situations as potential threats. Someone doesn't text back for 3 hours. A conversation feels slightly off. Someone's tone changes mid-sentence. Your amygdala isn't broken. It's doing exactly what it was trained to do. It learned that vigilance equals safety. The prefrontal cortex, forced maturity. Meanwhile, your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for decision-making, emotional regulation, and impulse control, had to develop ahead of schedule. Kids who have to manage adult-level emotional complexity don't get to develop this part of their brain gradually. It gets fast-tracked, which is why you might have been called mature for your age or an old soul. But that maturity wasn't a gift. It was a requirement. The HPA axis, chronic stress mode. Your hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, which regulates your stress response, can become dysregulated from prolonged activation. Normally, your body releases cortisol in response to stress, then returns to baseline once the threat passes. But when stress is constant, your HPA axis gets stuck in on mode. This leads to chronic cortisol elevation, which affects your sleep, your immune system, your digestion, your mood. It's why you can feel exhausted and wired at the same time. The body keeps the score. Psychiatrist Bessel Kolk's research showed that trauma isn't just stored in your mind, it's stored in your body. Tension in your shoulders that won't release. A tight chest when you're anxious, even though nothing's actively wrong. Stomach issues that doctors can't find a physical cause for. Your body remembers what your mind tries to move past. But here's the hope: neuroplasticity. The same brain that adapted to survive can adapt to heal. Neuroplasticity, your brain's ability to rewire itself, means that these patterns aren't permanent sentences. With time, with intention, with the right support, your nervous system can learn that it's safe to relax, that not every situation requires hypervigilance, that vulnerability doesn't always lead to harm. It's not quick, it's not linear, but it is possible. Before we get into the practical tools, we need to talk about what healing actually looks like. Because if you've been through too much, you've probably been conditioned to believe that healing should happen quickly, quietly, and without inconveniencing anyone. Let me be clear, that's bullshit. Healing from complex trauma isn't a 3-step process you complete over a long weekend. It's not about letting go or choosing happiness or any of the other oversimplified garbage you see on motivational Instagram posts. Real healing is messy. Some days you'll feel like you're making progress, and other days you'll feel like you're back at square one. You'll have weeks where you handle stress like a pro, and then something small will trigger you, and you'll wonder if you've learned anything at all. This is normal. This is not failure. This is what non-linear healing looks like. Also, healing doesn't mean you'll stop being sensitive or intuitive or deep. You're not trying to become a different person. You're trying to become a version of yourself that feels safe in your own nervous system. A version that can rest without guilt. A version that can set boundaries without apologizing. A version that can receive care without feeling like a burden. That's the goal. Here are 5 concrete practices that can help rewire the patterns we've been talking about. 1. Somatic tracking. What? Paying attention to where emotions show up in your body, not just in your thoughts. Why? Your body holds the emotional memory even when your mind tries to rationalize it away. How? When you notice anxiety, stress, or overwhelm, pause and ask yourself, where do I feel this in my body? Tightness in your chest, tension in your jaw, heaviness in your stomach? Just notice it. Don't try to fix it or make it go away. Breathe into that area for 30 seconds. Expect. You won't feel instant relief, but over time, you'll get better at catching stress before it spirals. 2. Boundary rehearsal. What? Practicing saying no in low-stakes situations before you need to use it in high-stakes ones. Why? If you've been through too much, boundaries probably feel terrifying because they used to have consequences. How? Start small. Say no to something minor this week. No, I can't make that dinner. No, I'm not available to help with that. Don't over-explain. Don't apologize. Just state the boundary and sit with the discomfort. Expect. It'll feel awful at first. Your nervous system will scream that you're being selfish. That's normal. The discomfort is proof you're rewiring old patterns. 3. Cognitive diffusion. What? Creating distance between yourself and your thoughts instead of believing every thought as truth. Why? Your mind has been trained to catastrophize, to assume the worst, to brace for impact. How? When an anxious thought shows up, they hate me. I'm gonna mess this up. This won't last. Instead of arguing with it or trying to disprove it, just label it. I'm having the thought that they hate me. I'm noticing my brain is predicting the worst again. This tiny shift creates space between you and the thought. Expect. Thoughts won't disappear, but they'll lose some of their power over you. 4. Intentional underfunctioning. What? Deliberately doing less in relationships to see what happens when you're not holding everything together. Why? If you've always been the overfunctioner, you need to test whether people will still care about you when you're not performing. How? Stop initiating every conversation. Stop being the one who always plans things. Let someone else take the lead for once. See what happens when you don't carry the emotional labor of the relationship. Expect. Some relationships will adjust and become more balanced. Others will fade, and that's information. Painful, but important. 5. Reparenting your nervous system. What? Consciously giving yourself the emotional reassurance you didn't receive growing up. Why? Your nervous system is still waiting for someone to tell it that it's safe, that it did enough, that it can rest. How? When you notice yourself spiraling or feeling small, pause and speak to yourself the way you wish someone had spoken to you as a kid. You're safe right now. You don't have to fix this immediately. It's okay to rest. It'll feel ridiculous at first. Do it anyway. Expect. Over time, your internal voice will start to shift from critical to compassionate. So, what does life actually look like on the other side of this work? Not perfect, not free of all anxiety or stress, but different. You'll still be intuitive, but you won't be hypervigilant. You'll still care deeply, but you won't lose yourself in other people's emotions. You'll still be thoughtful, but you won't overthink every interaction for 3 days straight. You'll start to notice that rest doesn't feel like laziness anymore, that asking for help doesn't feel like weakness, that saying no doesn't immediately trigger guilt. You'll have moments where you catch yourself relaxing into happiness without waiting for it to be taken away. Moments where you trust that someone cares about you without needing constant proof. Moments where you realize you've stopped apologizing for taking up space. And maybe most importantly, you'll break the cycle. The generational patterns that were passed down to you, the emotional unavailability, the conditional love, the unspoken rule that feelings are burdens, you'll be the one who says, not anymore. Not with anger, not with blame, just with quiet, deliberate choice. Before we wrap this up, I want to ask you something. If you could tell your younger self one thing about going through too much, what would it be? Drop it in the comments. Because Unfelt isn't just a channel, it's a community where people actually get each other. And someone scrolling through these comments might need to hear exactly what you have to say. Here's what I want you to walk away understanding. Your hypervigilance isn't paranoia, it's survival intelligence. Your emotional exhaustion isn't weakness, it's the cost of being strong without support for too long. Your difficulty with vulnerability isn't coldness, it's self-protection built from experience. And your depth, your sensitivity, your ability to see what others miss, none of that is a flaw. It's the evidence of a mind that adapted, a heart that kept caring even when it hurt, and a nervous system that never stopped trying to keep you safe. You didn't choose to go through too much, but you did choose, consciously or not, to keep going. And that matters more than you realize. Trauma therapist Pete Walker, who wrote Complex PTSD, From Surviving to Thriving, said something that's always stayed with me. You are not defective. You are responding to defective circumstances. Read that again. You are not defective. Your reactions make sense when you understand what you've lived through. Your patterns are not personality flaws. They're adaptive responses to an environment that required you to survive, not thrive. And now, with awareness, with intention, with time, you get to choose what you keep and what you let go of. You're not broken. You're not too much. You're not unlovable because you need time to trust. You're someone who survived circumstances that required you to grow up too fast, feel too much, and carry weight that was never yours to begin with. And now you get to rest, not just survive, actually rest. If this resonated with you, you're exactly where you need to be. On Unfelt, we explore psychology like this every single week. The stuff that hits deep, the patterns you recognize but don't have words for. Hit subscribe if you want more content like this. And in the comments, tell me, what topic should I cover next? What's something you've felt but never seen explained? Drop your suggestions. I read everyone. Take care of yourself. And remember, you're not alone in this.